everybody. This is Lori, and I am the founder and CEO of Inclusivity. And inclusivity is all about justice and kindness and sustainable fashion. And right now, we are working with artists from around the world to create this amazing auction, Artists Who Share. And we are incredibly fortunate today to have on our podcast, Inclusivi-TALKS, one of the artists who is working with us. And this artist, her name is Sydney Islam. And Sydney, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
It is a real pleasure. I wanted to start just by asking you, as an artist, sort of how did you get here? When did you first know that you were an artist? When did you first start creating? Just sort of the story of your evolution as an artist.
Yeah, so I don't think I ever really stumbled upon art. It was always just such a huge part of my life. On my mom's side, almost everyone is an artist of some sort, whether it's an architect or, a gallery owner and a painter or, whatever it is. So my mom always made it a huge priority in both my life and my sister's life. From, taking us to the Milwaukee Public Art Museum. I'm from Milwaukee, so it was right there for us. And she would take us there almost every month with a little caddy of art supplies, and she'd sit us in front of a painting and say go draw, and we'd just sit there for hours. And then she also had us enrolled in an art intensive preschool. So every week we had a new art movement, or we learned about a new artist. So it was always just a huge part of my life. And I was always just really fascinated in it. So it just grew from there. And I guess I started sitting down and, teaching myself to draw properly in middle school. And just throughout all that practice, I got better and better. And then in high school, I did AP art. And that's kind of where I really honed in a lot of my techniques and a lot of the things that inspired me. And I created a lot of really, really interesting projects that pushed me a lot. So yeah, it just, from there, I think it just blossomed, and now it's a huge part of my life.
So when you were little and your mom was taking you to museums, did you always appreciate that? Was it something that you always loved, or were there moments that you liked it less?
Oh, no, I always loved it. It was always such a treat because they always had exhibits that rotated. And especially going to a preschool where we were really taught to appreciate art and learned about different artists and artist movements. I actually had information about it going in, so then I could apply it, and it was always fun. Oh, I know Jackson Pollock, and he ended up turning into one of my favorite artists. So when that exhibit was there, I was so excited as a little girl. And so yeah, it was always a treat.
What a rich background for you as an artist. So you mentioned that one of your relatives has a gallery. Tell us a little bit about that. Did that relative influence your art as well, and influence you as you were growing up?
Yeah, definitely. My mom's sister, so my mom is from Slovakia, so all my family lives there, and my aunt has, a gallery and also a clothing shop in Slovakia. And she and one of her best friends, who's also an artist from Belgium, they collaborated, I think now twice or three times, on having huge exhibitions of art. And so it was always just really cool growing up being yeah, my aunt is a real artist. Everyone can be an artist, and I love that it's so inclusive, but she is that's what her profession is. And so it was really cool to see I can do that. And have someone as kind of a model for that. And also my house at my mom's is just filled with, her art and my aunt's art and some of my grandma's pieces and other artists that my aunt is really close friends with. So even just going around my house, it's a museum, and my mom can tell me all the stories from all these different artists. So it was, I was just consumed by art, which is amazing.
I love that. So is your mom's also an artist? What kind of art does she do?
She does like acrylic paintings, very abstract. I actually have a piece if
Could
you want.
you show us?
Yeah, definitely. Let me grab it. So it's a diptych like this.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, she does like very abstract, kind of
Wow.
natural looking. Like some of her pieces look very much like glaciers or ocean. Sometimes they look like,
That's gorgeous.
pieces of fire, stuff like that. So yeah, she's been doing a lot more since both my sister and I are out of the house and everything, which I'm really happy about because she used to paint all the time when she was like pregnant with both of us, and then when we were really little, but then obviously we're a handful.
Right.
So yeah. So it's great that she's continuing.
And is your aunt's style similar?
No, my aunt's style is totally different. Sorry, Kitty. She does they're etchings, so she does it on like a plate of metal. They're always circular, and she etches into that, and then she does prints. But they're very intricate, also very abstract. They're not necessarily anything in particular, but they're obviously my mom's style is much more like, you know, big abstractions. Hers are very, very detailed. So yeah.
I love that. So as a child, what was your favorite medium?
I would say when I was very little, probably paint, just because you can like get really messy with it. But then once I started really learning to draw, I really wanted to be like a hyper realistic, drawer. But that definitely wasn't my forte. But I did really like graphite and like sketching and stuff. And then through high school, I kind of realized like not to force myself to be a specific type of artist and try to find what I enjoy and what I'm good at and what flows. So that's when I kind of fell into mixed media because it gave me the freedom to use whatever I wanted. And it was also almost like another type of challenge, that the possibilities were endless. And I could use whatever materials I wanted, and that was really gratifying for me.
So what are you working on now? So what's your sort of what's your work now?
Yeah. Now I am trying to get a little bit more into graphic design, and a lot of like graphic drawing and graphic art. I got like a cool, drawing template, so I've been experimenting with that, just so that I can like add another element of mixed media into my drawing or into my art. So I really, liked exploring different mediums so that I could figure out the ways to apply that to, my whole like arsenal. So
very cool. And I know that you're creating things for the auction, and I'm wondering if you've thought about that, if you've decided at all what you're doing for that.
I was thinking about, I started a new piece, but it's very much a work in progress. So I think I'm going to actually submit one of my favorite pieces that I've done, just because I've gotten a lot of people really like it, and I've always like held on to it very tightly because I get attached to my art sometimes. But yeah, I think because I love it so much, I definitely want to give it to this cause. So
I love that. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, I have it, but I don't know if I should show it yet.
I think that'd be great.
Okay. So it's one of the pieces that's on my website, but
it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's canvas. It's very mixed media. So this is acrylic here. This is a print that I made on just on paper. This is marble paper that I made as well, and then this is a photograph that I painted on top of.
Wow.
And I think it's very relevant at this moment as well, because it's diverse, it's uplifting Black voices, because it's centering a woman of color, and And I think it's just very appropriate, and I want to highlight that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about a few years in the future, if you sort of think about your future, where would you like to be? What are you thinking?
Well, currently I am actually starting a magazine.
Okay.
And I never thought that, I never like realized that's a path that I would be really good at. I always was really interested in editorials.
Mm-hmm.
My AP art project in high school was like all about, challenging like the narrative of beauty in editorials. And so it was always like a huge point of fascination. I use a lot of like images from magazines and stuff like that in my mixed media. And so because what I'm majoring in is kind of a mix of journalism, anthropology, and studies in cinema and media culture, I've always been very passionate about having media actually contribute to making a change in like social justice activism, and representation in media is really important to me. And so this magazine that I'm making, it's called Skin, and it's for any women and non-binary identifying folks who can just come and tell their story in any kind of art or literature. And the topic is endless. Like you can have your pieces talk about anything, as long as it like relates to what it's like to be in the skin of a woman or a non-binary identifying person.
I love that.
Yeah, I think it's very important to get more of those voices in the media, especially like having, white folks telling telling the stories of marginalized communities. Like it's not going to help, uplift those voices, but having those people tell their stories themselves is what's going to like, get people to understand what it's like and that kind of thing. So I think going somewhere into like magazines, editorials, or media in general is where I'd like to be in the next 5 years, definitely.
That's very interesting. So is it launched already, and is it print as well as digital, or is it just digital? Or just print?
It's just going to be digital, just because of, pandemic and everything. Like I think it'll be easier for people to just access it online. I haven't yet like launched it. I was supposed to like a couple of like on June 1st or whatever, but because of everything going on, I haven't wanted to like pester people about submitting yet, because everyone's very busy with going to protest or clean up and everything. I have been. So I've pushed it just a little bit. Probably mid-June I'll launch the first issue, but I'm hoping to do a monthly issue. Yeah.
I love that. So how are you finding your contributors?
I have literally just been like texting or messaging friends and classmates that I know who identify as a woman or a non-binary identifying person. And I don't want to limit who is submitting, because everyone has a story, and I want this to be like a resource for people to feel safe, telling their stories. And people can submit anonymously. They can have like a pseudonym, like if they don't feel comfortable putting their name out. But so far, I've had a lot of people submit or have really positive responses to it and want to like read it. So I've just been, for the first issue, like just contacting people that I know, but I do have, some friends who are studying marketing and advertising who are going to help me like, market and get the word out on social media and stuff, so that anyone can submit.
And are you looking for art from people, or are you looking for stories, like editorial comments about their lives? What are you seeking for the magazine?
Yeah, it's art and literary. So whatever that means, you can make, digital art, you can make a painting and take a photo of it, stuff like that. You can even do 3D and take a photo, and I can, upload the picture, that kind of thing. And the nice thing that it is online, this website called Issue, which you can, upload any kind of like magazine or publication for businesses. They actually allow you to do videos as well. So I have a couple people do short videos and that kind of thing. And then literature, anything that, tells their story in a way. So I've had people do prose, I've had people do poems. A couple of friends are doing like music reviews or just like, opinion pieces talking about activists or books or whatever. So it's really expansive.
I love that. So before or at some point, send me just a write-up about what you're looking for, because I think several of the other artists who share would probably be wonderful contributors. So I'd love to help you spread that word out.
That would be amazing.
So if you had to think of one piece of advice that you would give to younger people who are feeling creative and trying to find their path, what would you say?
Definitely just start. I know, like, I'm a huge perfectionist, and when I was trying to be like a hyper realistic artist and I was trying to force myself into that box, it was so restrictive, and it forced me to like not create art that I was proud of because it wasn't me. But if I didn't just start, then I wouldn't have found that out, and then I wouldn't have like found my way to mixed media. And it's just, if you constantly are in your head about how you want it to look, and you don't just do it, then you're not going to get there. So
I think that is magnificent advice. As you sort of think about yourself and what's at the core of you, what drives you, what how you define yourself, what can you tell us about that, sort of your passion or maybe your philosophy of life?
Sure. I don't know how to put this into like one sentence. I would just.
It doesn't have to be one sentence. You can speak longer than that.
Okay. I mean, studying what I'm studying, like I've always been very passionate about, diversity and social justice issues and like being an activist. And I think art is an incredible way to do that. There are so many ways to be an activist and to fight for justice, but having the ability to move people through art is really powerful. And not just, fine art like painting and drawing and sculpture, but, documentaries and movies and songs, like that's all art, and it's all incredibly moving. And being able to like, tap into someone's, emotions that way and make them want to also fight for justice through a work of art, I think is incredibly powerful. And so, my philosophy, I guess, is to just get as many people on board with, fighting for equality and fighting for justice and equity. And I guess in a nutshell.
I love that. So finding ways to spread equity and justice in this diverse universe, in this diverse world. I think that's lovely. What's your cultural background? I know you said your mom was from
Slovakia.
Okay.
And then my dad is from Bangladesh. And they both immigrated here in their like mid-20s. My mom, she got her master's degree in Slovakia at the University of Bratislava, and then my dad came to the U.S. For his master's, so he went to Clemson in South Carolina. So they both were kind of like all over the U.S., and they eventually, moved around and met in Milwaukee. They were working for the same company, but so my background is incredibly like it's very different, like both sides, you know. I'll tell people like, oh, I'm Slovak and Bengali, and they're like, that's an interesting conversation. Like they're just like on opposite
What?
yeah, so it was always very, very interesting having like two polar opposite cultures that I grew up with, including, you know, American
Right.
as well, because you know, I was born here and all of that, but I traveled a lot to both countries, mostly Slovakia, just because it was easier. It's like a 23-hour journey to Bangladesh, so that was tricky when we were young. But yeah, I do have a lot of family from my dad's side, you know, scattered all over the world. He has like 11 siblings, so it's a really big family. So I have still been able to like keep close ties with my family and my culture, because there are, you know, members that who are closer, even if I don't get to travel there often. But yeah, it was just it's a very rich background.
So how would you say that those two, well, and I would just want to make a comment that I think what's lovely about that is that you make it hard for people to pigeonhole you. And I think we want to do that for whatever reason, we want to know where someone stands, and we want to know something that we can define them with. And I think we need to stop doing that. I don't think that it doesn't help us,
Yeah.
but I think you probably make it very difficult for people to do that. So
Yeah.
Fantastic. How would you say those two very different cultures have influenced you?
Yeah. So I would say like Slovak culture is a Western culture because, you know, Slovakia is in Europe. So it's not too far off from, you know, American culture. So I would say of everything, like with Slovak culture, I think mostly just specific things with my family on my like Slovak side is what influenced me. So obviously, you know, the art was a heavy influence, as well as my mom grew up in Liptovský Mikuláš in Jemenovská dolina, which is right in the mountains in the low Tatras of Slovakia. And so every summer we would go there just so that we could, you know, help my grandparents and everything. But it was in the mountains, so that kind of is where a lot of my, you know, love for nature comes from. And then on my dad's side, God, that I think that is like one of the most richest cultures. I'm biased, but it's just so vibrant, and I think in ways having, you know, two very different sides and like two different race, like I'm biracial, and both my parents practice different religions and they speak their own languages. I think that's where like my like strong desire to promote you know, acceptance and equality comes from, because I have two like very different backgrounds, yet they were able to like come together and have me and my sister and stuff like that and appreciate one another. And yeah, I also think that's where my passion for fighting for racial justice comes from as well. Being very white passing, I have a lot of white privilege, but then that it caused a lot of like internal conflict with my sister as well. We've talked about this a lot, how like we grew up in a very like white neighborhood in Milwaukee, and experiencing a lot of white privilege, yet a lot of my family members don't. So it was very like difficult growing up with that and like figuring out what that meant. And then now like having to use the white privilege that I get from my skin color to fight for people like my family and, you know, BIPOC, because I have a very unique position. So yeah, it was very influential for me.
So you said that Bangladesh is one of the richest cultures that you've ever experienced. Give us one example of something that you feel just when you're there that is just kind of moving and touches the culture there.
Yeah. I would say like the most amazing like experience that I've had was at one of my cousin's weddings. And Bengali weddings, especially if they're in Bangladesh, are enormous. So there was probably like 2,000 people there because it's a marriage of communities.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like this huge thing. And being her cousin, I was on the bridal party, and so we carried her in on a throne, and then the groom rode in on a white stallion. Like, it was just like extravagant and
Wow.
gorgeous. Yeah. And we all had like all like kind of sections of the family, so like all the cousins or all the aunts or whatever came up with dances, and we had to like perform for them. Like, it was just like incredible and extravagant and so over the top, but like amazing. So
Okay, that sounds incredible.
yeah.
Was it bright and colorful as well?
Yes, incredibly so. Like, it just color everywhere. White is actually the color of death in Bengali culture, as well as like in Indian culture. So there are no like white dresses or anything. So she had this gorgeous like red and green dress, and she was just decked from head to toe with like jewels, and it was just, yeah, it was beautiful.
Sounds spectacular.
It was.
Sounds really spectacular. So in your life, besides well, all the cultural richness as well as your art, what are your other and equity? So what else do you enjoy doing? What are your other pastimes or the other things you enjoy?
Well, photography, even though that's another form of art, I love photography, and being active. I like played tennis for like 10 years. I still like to do that a lot. And going for runs and stuff like that.
Now, you're starting a magazine. Are you also a writer?
I've never considered myself that, but I do very much like writing, and I think I'm pretty good at it. So
Yes.
Sure.
So yes, you are.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take it.
It's okay to take that and then maybe start thinking about that
Mm-hmm.
and sort of how that is a part of you too. And what I find talking to artists all the time is that almost no artists are artists in one way.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about that creative spirit,
Yeah.
and that desire to make something that I think kind of permeates all aspects of people's lives. And most artists I know are artists in so many different ways and create so many different things. And photography is absolutely an art. So I've seen some of your photographs and they're really beautiful. Do you have any you could show to us right now?
Yeah. I mean, I have art, hanging up all on my walls.
Of course.
I don't know if it'll come down, so I don't know if you can see. Okay, so there's one piece that I took when I was in Cuba, and I was actually thinking about also submitting. I have a different version of this.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful.
It's a very close up of this guy who I saw, and then I have some piece. This is another mixed media piece I did.
Oh my gosh.
And then this is, where's my camera?
Yeah, we can see it.
You got it? Okay.
Yeah.
So the black and white one I took in South Africa, and then the colored one is in Barcelona.
Beautiful.
And then, let's see. This was also in Cuba.
I love that.
Cars, which was really cool. This one was in Hawaii. Let's see, what else do I have? I think a lot of these are just my mixed media pieces.
Your art is just stunning.
Thank you.
Your photography is just beautiful.
Thank you.
Just beautiful. Thank you so much for showing us that.
Yeah, of course.
So, what is there anything else you'd like to talk about or tell us about that we haven't talked about before I ask you to tell us a story from your life?
I don't think so.
Okay. So if someone who's listening wanted to get in touch with you about a story, for your magazine in particular, or art for your magazine, how would they do that? Do you have a website? How would they do that?
So I don't quite have a website, but I am in the process of building that. I think the biggest thing is I need content for it. So after the first issue, I think I'll be able to, fully build that. But as of right now, I just have like a shared Google Doc that has, the mission statement and, how to submit, and then a submission folder. So if they just want to contact me through, Instagram or through my email, then they can do that and I can forward that to them.
And then what we're watching for is the launch of Skin, which you're going to share with me when that happens so I can put it out on our social media as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So the last thing I want to ask you about is I just want to ask you to tell us a story from your life. And I'm so interested to know what you're going to choose, because it's so clear that your life has this incredible breadth. And I'm really curious as to what story you're going to choose to tell us.
Yeah. So one story I was thinking about, it's actually the origin of that that man in Cuba that I took, and I am thinking about also submitting that.
Yes, I would love that.
Yeah. So that story, I went to Cuba about, like, I think it was 2015. So it was the same year that they opened up, the borders, and they uplifted the U.S. embargo on Cuba. And we went in March, so it was like 3 days after Obama was the first U.S. president to set foot on Cuban soil in 88 years. Wow. So it was incredibly, it was just an incredible experience, being one of the first, groups of schools to, it was an educational trip. So one of those first student groups to, be in Cuba in that long. And so we were there when everything was very volatile with the direction that Cuba was going to take. Was it going to become very Americanized and have, advertisements and, tourism everywhere and commodifying, the rich culture of Cuba? Or was it going to try to maintain, the cultural richness that it had? So it was just an incredible time to be there. And I actually published a book about the U.S. embargo on Cuba and how that affected the culture and people there. So it was like a photojournalistic book, and that's one of the photos that was in it. But we were in Old Havana, and we were just touring around and talking to some local artists there. And one of my teachers, he knew that I'm very close with him. I considered him like my mentor in high school, and he knew that I was doing this project. And so he was like, you can do anything that you need to do. For everyone else, he, wanted to make sure everyone stayed as a group and everything. But for me, he was like, if you need to take a picture, go around and take a picture. You do what you got to do. So I was walking down this alleyway, and I see this man. I have my camera with me. So he sees that, and so he beckons me to come and take his picture. And so I got this incredible photo, and it actually went on to win some art competitions. And I wish that I could find him and give him this photo and give him all of the proceeds that it got, because you can just read on his face all of the stories and years that he has on him. And yeah, it was just a beautiful experience. I
just want to make a comment that So for me, during this really difficult time where, with George Floyd's murder and the coronavirus, and just this sense that we have to deal with the racial inequity and we have to take a stand. For me, what has actually kept me moving forward and allowed me to function during this time is talking with you and the artists that I get to speak with, because I am just filled with hope when I speak to people who really are just in their daily lives, by the things they're choosing to do and the way they're choosing to represent the world, making a difference, and are the absolute beacon of hope that I need right now. And so the fact that I started this auction before George Floyd was murdered, and then was able to incorporate that story into the auction, for me is quite literally what is saving me right now. And so I just want to thank you, because I think you are magnificent, and I think the world is so much better because you are here. And I can't wait to see what else you do for us and for the world. So anyway, I don't know why I'm so emotional today, but anyway, just thank you, because it's a big deal. And your representation of that gentleman, beautiful. And your representation of the diversity of us, really helpful. So anyway, thank you, Sydney. Thank you for being here. Thank you for talking with us, and just thank you for being.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's such a privilege and an honor.
Well, it has been an extreme pleasure, and that this is our podcast, Inclusivi-TALKS, and we are once again honored to have Sydnney Islam here talking with us. And Sydney, thank you, and we will see a lot more of you.
Yes, thank you so much.
If she's a mountain